We have a fantastic panel lined up to talk about all things aggregator. How did aggregators really become prevalent in today's industry? What does it all mean? Where is it all going? And I have a power trio of experts to welcome to the stage. I'm going to introduce them one by one so you can give them all a big, rousing post-lunch round of applause with me. Ladies and gents, please welcome our first rockstar guest, Alexandre the Gate. Please welcome Alexandre Tomic, the founder and CEO of Alea. Welcome, Alexandre. What's up, man? Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Hey, dude. Awesome. And please welcome to the stage the founder and CEO of BeyondPlay, Karolina Pelc. Big round of applause for Karolina. Thank you. Great to see you, Karolina. And joining these two awesome people is the Chief Business Development Officer at Blue Guru Games. Big round of applause for Liam Mulvaney. Welcome, Liam. Hey, great to see you, Liam. Okay, make yourselves comfortable, folks. We're all good here. So, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, many of the hundreds, if not thousands of people joining by the live stream or on demand, they know who you are, they know what you do, but in time-honored tradition, please share with the audience a bit about who you are and what you do, and also where you sit in the ecosystem with aggregation. How does that matter to your world? Starting with your good self, Alex.
All right, so I'm Alexandre Tomic. I'm the founder and CEO of Alea. Alea was founded 12 years ago. We started as a B2C operation. And as a B2C operation, we had to integrate a lot of software providers. So we did that work at the beginning. We just started to integrate 2 or 3 because in 2010, 2012, you wouldn't need a lot of software providers. You could go on the market with like basic NetEnt and Betsoft. And the situation has evolved during the past years. And today, you need at least 50 software providers. And we shifted our business model, and today we are a game aggregator. So basically, we are a game aggregation platform. We don't have a PAM. We don't have a player account management. We just deal with games, specifically with games. So we integrate around, I don't know, 100 software providers with 5,000-10,000 games. We do this 100 integration, and we output just one API for an operator to integrate all these software providers.
Fantastic. I love it. Yeah, it's so perfect for this panel, like all of you. And coming over to your good self, Karolina, tell the good people here a bit about what you do over at BeyondPlay.
Hi, everyone. I'm a founder and CEO of BeyondPlay, which is a startup venture building multiplayer technology for online slots. I think I'm here also because of my previous capacity. I worked many years on the operator side, most recently for Leo Vegas Group, where I was a casino director. So I've also seen the evolution of working with the various aggregators and how the value provided by them changed. And my perspective from BeyondPlay, I think, is also quite interesting to the conversation because we do work with game studios. We look into the benefits of aggregation, both as route to market, but also wider reach for the studios that we want to collaborate with.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karolina. Wonderful. And with a fine Irish name, Liam Mulvaney, tell us, the good people, a bit about what you do at Blue Guru Games.
So I'm one of the founders of Blue Guru Games, handle the business development side of things. We're on the spectrum of building content. So we are the slot providers who then work with aggregators to get our content out in front of the operators or in front of the players, so be it. So we are on that end of the spectrum where, we build onto that middle ground, which is the aggregator, and of course, all the different options which exist out there to get our games in front of players.
Fantastic. Liam, I'm going to stay with yourself for the first huge question, and this is content really king in 2022?
That's a tough one, and yes. I think we all want to think it is. I think we all want it to be. I think that it has become harder and harder for content to be king nowadays. The amount of games coming out, the amount of slots coming out has become quite hard to deal with, not just from the operator side itself, from the aggregator side as well, I think. Because aggregators, of course, take the content, but how do they differentiate content going to which operators and how they can actually use these games? So as much as I'd love content to become king again, I think right now we're at a stage where the quantity of content is outweighing the quality side of things.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, as in the world of music, there's just so much stuff being released. I make a lot of music analogies, bear with me. In the world of music, there's so much music being released, it's sort of almost impossible to measure. So you need, algorithmic-based aggregators, you need DJs, selectors to actually put the music that you'll appreciate in front of you. Karolina, do you think there's a similar role in terms of aggregators bringing the best stuff to the market? How does it all fit together?
I do think that they play a very important role, and as I said, the perspective I'm bringing here is similarly to Alex. I used to work for a brand which didn't really see the value of aggregation that much, 6, 7 years ago, and we had the capacity internally to integrate studios one by one, and we didn't feel the need to sort of pay for the middleman. But it was very different times back then. It was just a handful of providers. The game performance was quite consistent, and there was not that many games coming out. These days, I think it's super important to have a mechanism as a casino, owner, that you can pick and choose the content from the providers almost like on demand, So the aggregation is super important to that, because it's not to say that if one provider performs amazingly well for you last month, it's going to perform equally well next month, and you want to have that flexibility without the headache of, okay, we've committed towards this integration, our resources roadmap, now we're stuck and we have to keep pushing that. The aggregation gives you that freedom to sort of open the book and just say, I like that, and go as you please.
Nice. I mean, that leads very nicely onto your good self, Alex. Now, talk to us a bit about the role of quality, because it's not just about opening the hose and just firing games and solutions. It's about the aggregation, the selection. How do you kind of apply a lens of quality over what you do at Alea, and how is this a competitive advantage?
To be honest, we can look at aggregators as boring companies. We do the boring stuff. We had this discussion with Karolina back in time. We wanted to build a product that was very similar in its spirit as what Karolina is doing with BeyondPlay. Gamification, more social battles, player playing against each other, player playing together, and we were having this discussion together. And actually, I wanted to invest in BeyondPlay, and I didn't, because I thought it would be a conflict of interest. And finally, we didn't do it. And why? Because we're doing the boring stuff. And the boring stuff is basically all the APIs. You have these 100 APIs that you have to integrate properly. You have to have purity of data. You need to have a robust API. You need to be sure that everything's done properly, because otherwise it can be exploited. And it is. Some new software providers, they come, they do beautiful games, but they're not very savvy about APIs. They don't familiar with API governance, so what are the good practice of APIs, and it can be exploited by players. And then it's exploited on one game, they take the money, push it on other software providers, etc., etc. So the base of our work is the boring aspect of being very sure that when we integrate a software provider, it is done properly. It doesn't mean that we integrate properly their API. It means that if we have to tell them that their API is not properly coded, we need to tell them, and we need actually to tell them to use our API and establish our API as a model, as an open API. So that's the first thing, because without that, there's no recommendation engine, there's no BI, there's no data, there's no quality choice, there's no story. If we don't do that boring part as a foundation, that's the most important thing. And then after that, there's one aspect that's very important to an aggregator. We have data. So we see who plays what on which market. And it's not just per market. It's not just to say, okay, this software provider works in this market. It's also what type of segment of your database is playing what type of games. There's not one type of game that are appealing to every player. The players are very different. They have different risk appetites. Some players are very volatile, some are not volatile. Some, they want a win that be at least 1,000 times the bet, and other, they can't stand to have 4 spins without a win. So you need to be able to analyze that data and be able to recommend type of slots to type of players. And I believe that today, because of the spread of data we have, the quantity of data we have, we are in a very good position to be games specialists.
Yeah. Fantastic. You know, as I say, it's a truism, but because it's very true, data is the new oil. If you're aggregating all of that content, getting amazing visibility of what's happening on the other side, that's a huge amount of value on top of the individual supplies. And I like what you were saying there about it's not just the quality of the games, it's the quality of the tech, the quality, the integration, the single API that really kind of cuts through. And coming over to yourself, Liam, talk to us a bit about the role of aggregators in regulated markets, because it's not only the tech, it's also the compliance that's the bedrock of a great experience.
So that's one thing which, from a slot provider, right, we rely heavily on aggregators from. As slot providers, of course, we certify games in the regulated markets, but we avoid needing to spend too much time looking at how the game needs to perform within those markets.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you look at if it's seconds rules, a game needs to perform or function in a particular way. We can build in one way, and it's the aggregator which then handles the changes on their end. So for us, we are able to then work purely on game development. We can actually focus purely on the game development side of things without needing to worry with the tech. So as Alex is saying, that part, although it's the boring part, it's what allows us and other studios to get into these markets much quicker, right? So we are able to, without doing much on our end, able to rely heavily on aggregators and RGSs that we work with to be able to access markets. And that in turn is also a bit kind of bringing back what we said before about, quantity side, is one of the reasons why, quantity has increased. It is easier to hit these markets, where before there was a price cost or a price barrier for slots to get into these markets. That has reduced significantly because of aggregators and operators. So before an RGS would need, or a game supplier needed to integrate everywhere, took time, there was a cost involved in all of that. And nowadays, I can build once and have that game in front of multiple operators, millions of players ideally, or hopefully. And that, of course, has caused the repercussion of the ripple effect, rather than the repercussion of having much more quantity into the market from slot providers and, of course, aggregators.
Win-win-win. It sounds like that's great. I mean, you really kind of touched upon one of the great unlocks possibly around the aggregator market, which I'll come to yourself now, Karolina. Liam was talking about the kind of additional advantages that he's experiencing in terms of time to market, in terms of reaching millions of players. Do you think that people look at this enough? I mean, it sounds like quite a big part of the whole aggregator kind of ecosystem.
Absolutely. I think aggregators are critical to the innovation side of the industry, right? Because that, as you said, there's such big barriers of entry. Unfortunately, as BeyondPlay, I'm not really able to benefit from those that value that much because we're not a game provider. So we are a platform that actually needs its own compliance team, its own licensing process, and so on. But there's so many people in the industry with great games experience, and if they had to start from scratch and go through those processes, majority of them would have discouraged. It's much easier to bootstrap a game studio these days if you have a partner in an aggregator, and I think that brings a lot of innovation and a lot of fresh ideas to the market, which wouldn't be there otherwise. For us, particularly, we see the aggregation benefit from a little bit different side, because not so much on a market access, because unfortunately, the way the product is designed, it's a completely different vertical. It's a multiplayer API, which the aggregators don't necessarily extend easily towards operators. Now, we collaborate with game studios to enable our technology on particular game studios, and that's what aggregator really become important to us, because rather than having to deal with each partner separately and do the game client integration, we're hoping at some point we're going to be able to just plug in to one of the lovely aggregators out there who we're talking to and support all the studios that they support, which would make it much easier for us to offer operators great portfolio of games enabled with multiplayer.
Nice, nice. And, folks, if there are any lovely aggregators here in Valletta or watching us on the live stream, please do drop Karolina a line. You saw it there. I love it. That's brilliant. And Alexandre, talk to us a bit about, what would the world look like without aggregators? It sounds like it wouldn't be that much fun.
No, I mean, we were living very well without aggregators back in time. I didn't like myself aggregators because they were adding latency. They were hosted on their own servers. If their servers will crash, your entire operation will crash, because let's say that you have 50 game providers, they go through one aggregator crash, it's 50 game providers that crash. Wow. Things have changed because you've got the cloud now. Mm-hmm. So we're completely on the cloud. We have what we call game delivery network. We can deploy virtual servers on Amazon Web AWS in any part of the world and accelerate the spins, have a lower latency. We have 20 milliseconds latency. So a lot of things changed with technology, which made aggregator yesterday almost a necessary evil to a technology that allows to
Don't worry. Listen, your English is one of the
to allocate your resources to product, to development. You want your developers to work on the product. You want your developers to work on the kind of things that Karolina's developers are working.
Yeah.
You don't want your developers to work on APIs, integrating APIs. Okay?
Totally, totally. Yeah, I mean,
The word was real.
Fantastic.
Reallocate.
Reallocate.
We made it.
Boom. Okay, if we could just, get that trending on social, that'd be great. Do please take photographs of our amazing rockstar speakers. Share them on the iGaming Next socials. We really need your support. Let's spread the word. Anyway, speaking of which, coming over to yourself, Liam. Now, talk to us a bit about aggregators and their own content. A lot of it is about removing barriers, 20 milliseconds latency, freeing up development resources, reaching new markets quicker. Is there a role for aggregators to do their own content, or how does that fit in the ecosystem from your point of view?
I think we already see it nowadays. There already are aggregators in one way or another, shape or form, who have either their own studios, building their own content. So this was always kind of, we've had, talks with people who tell us we are, real aggregators because maybe they don't have their own content. So what they're doing is taking all studios, all other games, and putting them in one specific place for a multiple of operators to be able to actually get hold of this content in one end or another. And nowadays, of course, there are also aggregators who are looking at that distribution network themselves and hooking onto their own games and making their own games to actually get in front of everyone. So I think it's just a matter of, there is a number of games out there. Aggregators are performing that function which we need. I think Alex said necessary, but I don't think necessarily the word evil is kind of needed there, because I think it's a necessary thing nowadays. You can't have a game studio access the number of operators you need nowadays on your day one of release without having games onto aggregators hooked in one way or another to those aggregators to get your games out there. It has become a reality. Add regulated markets to that, where I could potentially have a game in a regulated market without actually seeing an operator. That's how easy it would be nowadays to get. I say easy. We all know the pains, if there's any game developers out there and aggregators, how hard it actually is. But you can get content out there years ahead than you used to before.
Fantastic. So aggregators are kind of making the hard stuff easy. They're doing the boring stuff, so you don't have to. It does sound fantastic. And obviously, we live in a world that's increasingly moving online. Everything's in the cloud, like you were saying. Where do we think this is going to go in the future? We got like 2.5 minutes on the clock. Has anybody got any predictions? Is there anything you'd like to see in the market? Who'd like to jump in? Liam, oh no, Karolina.
I mean, what I'm seeing in the industry is definitely a big competition between aggregators, right? Some couple of years ago, there was talks about limited sources of differentiation between different platforms. I think that's changing. I mean, as you said, I would disagree, because I do think content is still king. That's why we're seeing so many different purchases of studios, and everybody wants to have first-party content over third-party content and second-party content. There is, I wouldn't say that just do the boring stuff, because there's a lot of stuff like Relax is building their own jackpots, there's gamification on other platforms. So they're trying to innovate in their own way to widen their distribution and widen their reach on the market. So I think what we'll see in future more of is exclusive distribution of games only via particular platforms. And I think the ones that have the strongest negotiating power and the widest sort of tentacles into different operators are going to be the winners in the space.
Outstanding, wonderful. Who wants to jump in next? Alex, Liam? Alex?
No, I just say that we need to first to do the boring thing to be able to do the fun thing behind. And the fun thing is puts tools on top of it, and typically like BeyondPlay integrated.
I love the plugins, by the way. Thank you, Alex.
Right?
Integrate. No, but that's serious. That's how I see it. The first thing I want to do is integrate BeyondPlay into Alea, because I think it will bring value. And I don't develop it myself because I'm busy doing other stuff, and you do that much better than me, And that's what aggregation is going to do to tomorrow. They're going to aggregate software as a service. It can be CRM, as far as we look at, not at player data, because we don't have player data, but we look at game data, okay? And what I've said before, BI, data, that's what aggregators have to become. They have to become the game specialist of the industry. We know games. We have data more than anyone else on very, very different market. There's no one operator that's addressing every market that an aggregator has inside because he's working with a lot of operators, you know, and a lot of different brands that have a lot of different player segmentation. So we have access to data more than anyone else.
Outstanding. And we've only got 3 seconds on the clock. Quick question. Are you all joining us for drinks later? So if people want to speak. Fine. Okay, that was the right answer. Brilliant. Ladies and gents, please join me in thanking Alexandre Tomic, Karolina Pelc, and Liam Mulvaney. Thank you so much. Absolutely brilliant. So, folks, we will be back very shortly. Come back here or just stay here until 3:15. Karolina's going to have a great session about the Nostradamus scenarios. And please do get involved on social media and share your thoughts about these awesome speakers. And we're now going to do a selfie. So please all wave. You getting a selfie? Great. That's it. We're going to all get on LinkedIn. Yay. That's it. Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you.